coming. And thank you, Tim. I absolutely love bavarding. I absolutely love Tim. His creation is awesome. So, I am Julia the runner. All of my life I have been defined, I would say, as, oh, you're Julia the runner. And so it seemed fitting that I had my 60th birthday in May last year, and it seemed very, very fitting that I would celebrate being 60 by running a race. And I thought I'd been running very fast and very well for a 60-year-old. I decided that I would run this race, celebrate being 60 years old, and that I would zoom in to the top few on the leaderboard of the over 60-year-olds in the country. This was the plan. But on my 60th birthday, I woke up at 6:30 in the morning, and Nadi was with me, and I said, something's really wrong with my body. And we went to the bathroom. The next thing is, I'm in an ambulance. I'm spending my 60th birthday and the next 2 days in hospital. So, I have been running all of my life. This is a recent photo, but the story goes that I started to walk at 9 months old, and the next thing I was running, and I haven't stopped. I knew that I was a runner, or I wanted to run, from, I'd say, 6 years old. I knew that running was what I'd come to do. I actually wrote to God in the condensation on my bedroom window when I was at my first school in the sports day, and I wrote to him saying, please let me win the running race. And I wrote in mirror writing, because of course I wanted to make sure that he could read this clearly. So then, by the time I was 8, these two paths in my life started to emerge and converge, in that I was brought up in a family that was very, very Christian, that went to church a lot, and I was brought up with regular visiting to church, which I actually loved. And I can remember one thing very vividly was there was a plaque on the church as you went in of somebody's gravestone that said, all ye who pass this way along, think on how sudden I am gone. Life does not always warning give, therefore be conscious how you live. And it kind of struck me, and I was 8, and I was like, oh. And then I remember listening to the vicar in church, and listening and understanding something very deeply in my being. And he spoke of the concept of the serpent with the tail in its mouth, and that this was the completion of our journey, and that this was our resolution of clearing from within us anything that was preventing us from shining the light that we truly are, that was preventing us from being the truth of our expression. And I internalized at 8 years old that I had come here to shine my light. I also internalized, because I wanted to run, and I believed that I had been born to run, that I was going to show my light through my running. So the two were alongside each other. I also loved to run fast. So I loved to see how fast I could run, see what was possible. And I was regularly saying to my dad, Daddy, time me. So we used to come to the playing fields and I'd run. He'd stand down by the roundabouts. I'd start up at the swings and I'd race as fast as I could and try and beat my time again and again and again. I ran. And it was in my own spirit and in my own being that I wanted to see how fast I could run. And by 12 years old, I was competing. I can remember running. I was a very barefoot being. I would run. I remember running in Farnham somewhere, the Farnham and District Sports, and running 800 metres on the track and loving the expression of trying to win and trying to run fast. But there was a freedom in this, and it was part of the expression of who I was. And as I say, it converged with the journey of recognising. I remember recognising very young that if I was horrible to anyone, it was really worse than anyone else being horrible to anyone, because I knew that I was here to clear that out of my being. So by 15 years old, I have started to run races. I've zoomed into the top few in the country. It was very natural. I was born to run. So here it is, the running body that came out running and still running. So I was zoomed into the leaderboard of the under 15s or something, but very naturally, and I loved it and I enjoyed it and I loved shining my light, and it was fun. And so I started myself to branch forth from the Bible, which was like Lucian's quote. I'm very, very good at quoting biblical things. I read the Bible every day. It was my reading, my inspiration. But I branched out and I read Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And of course this, I was by now about 15, loving, running in Surrey Schools Championships now, and starting to dream of international honours. So I remember reading, this is Jonathan Livingston Seagull. He was a gull. He was seeking, like me, to make his flying his spiritual expression, his light, his shining joy. So I resonated with Jonathan. He spoke to me, and he was teaching Fletchgull to fly. And one of the quotes that I remember reading, he says, "Fletch says, are you saying I can fly?" And Jonathan says, "I'm saying you are free." And I recognised that I was a free spirit. I thought of myself as a free spirit. My teachers and my parents thought of me as very, very naughty, but I was a free being. I also loved, it resonated for me, that there's another quote which I haven't got up there, but Jonathan speaks about your whole body from wingtip to wingtip, or arm to arm in my case. Your whole body is nothing more than thought itself in a form you can see. Break the chains of your thought and you break the chains of your body too. And it resonated again with this idea I had of clearing anything that was stopping me expressing who I really was, my light, through this body, and using my mind to express that I wasn't my body, I wasn't my mind, that I was free. So much so that I remember doing school assembly. By now I'm coming up to 16. I read that quote out in school assembly, and I then even wrote my own runner's prayer. So as I run, let me become more free, more me. And as I run, let light shine from within me so others may see it and find it for themselves. Because by now, the other theme of my life is that I've worked, people have sought me for guidance from the age of 16, 17. That's been my life's journey. And so I recognised really early on that my most important work, if I were to help others or to be a guide in any way, it was important that I was clear, that I was the clearest mirror that I could possibly be for these people to see themselves. Well, I've got 6 years to get through, and obviously I made many mistakes. We won't do that now. So the journey for my own freedom, yes, has been a long one, of course, to actually live what I came to live. Because then, what started to happen was I was very, very good. I was winning things. I was on the edge of international stardom, and what started to happen was that there was the lights shining, that from the outside came the excitement of other people. My father got very excited, my coach got very excited. There was this incredibly talented young girl, I'm a teenager by now, and of course with intention of encouragement, there were the quotes, the "darling, no one remembers who came second." There was the "you gain through pain." There was many of those kind of, this is just the beginning. I do some incredible race that then was met with, this is just the beginning. Now, of course, these phrases were meant with an intention to encourage, but what started to happen to me was I started to feel the pressure on my shoulders, particularly as at that time, the influence of fun in my life, which was my mum, who'd always said, "Oh, darling, have fun. Oh, I don't mind if you come last," had died. So I then internalised more the pressure, and somewhere in my being something started to tip, and I became connected to the tension of having to now run to, instead of to shine love and light out of me, I started to get muddled, and I was running to gain recognition, to gain love, to gain acceptance, which of course meant there was enormous pressure on me at all times. And I even remember my first international vest that I gained. I'd taken 2 attempts at it because by now I was 17 and I knew I was on the edge of international honours. But because I was under tension, I ran the first race and got tangled up with a girl who'd fallen over. I tripped over her, other people tripped over me, Of course, it all went wrong. Things were starting to, go wrong. So within that I became very hard on myself. The next time I had an opportunity for an international vest, I didn't eat very much because I thought it would make me light. It made me very weak. Then I can remember I did achieve my first vest, and it was a race that was 300 young women, all hopefuls, and it was 6 were going to be selected, and it was a 3-lap race. And the first lap I was in the first 20, the second lap I'm in the first 12, the third lap there's 6 of us broken away. So I knew that I was running to my first international vest. So of course there was excitement, but the pressure was starting to be absolutely huge. So this now, I then proceeded to become a very good international runner. So now, during this time, I would say from the age of 19, I became an international athlete. I had at least over 10-year international career. But I had some incredible experiences. For instance, this is me. I'm now 26 years old. I'm running the Dublin Marathon. I'm winning it, which of course is fun. It's great. I love to win. And I was hoping to break 2:40. As you see, I don't quite break 2:40. I ran 2:41 that day. But I'd run nearly all the way on my own because the lead women had set off early, and I broke free from the field at about 3 miles. And then I ran, obviously surrounded by motorbikes and helicopters above me, and someone even tried to interview me with about 3 miles to go, one of those vans. But of course, that was amazing. That experience, to those cheering crowds, the helicopter sound, the sounds of the vans, and then everybody leaves me, you'll see, and I'm left to go and do what I've come to do. I've been born to run, but by now my running is both my salvation and my nemesis, because this difficulty I had with the pain of desperately wanting recognition, nothing was good enough, desperately wanting to be approved of, loved, had taken its hold. So although this was great and I had a fabulous run, days before that, the tension was enormous. I was in tears a lot of the time. I had my period coming, so I felt fat and just felt it was just very, very hard. The tension spoiled the joy of, the lead up. That was marvellous. They've got the men's time here because the men set off 15 minutes later, so I actually ran 2:41. And then after that, immediately after that race, which was fabulous, as you can imagine, I was then immediately selected to run for Tokyo. Not for Tokyo. I was selected to run for Great Britain in Tokyo, but I was too exhausted. I was far too exhausted emotionally, mentally. So there was a big kind of this going on. This is actually my international running career. This is my first marathon there. I was 22 years old, and I think I ran 3:02 that day. I'd come back from a lot of, I'd been to Loughborough University, I dropped out of Loughborough University. There was a lot of things going on. But then, in 1986, this is me on Westminster Bridge, finishing the London Marathon, and it was a triumph. I obviously ran a very fast time. I ran 2:36. I was selected for the Commonwealth Games. I felt amazing running the race. I felt like I was jogging. I mean, it sounds a bit mad. I can't run 1 mile in 6 minutes now. And that's wait a sec. Sorry. That's my wonderful tech support here. But before the race, the day before the race, there'd been enormous tension. I had been in the Louvre 9 times. I went to bed at midnight crying, going, I can't do this, I can't run this race. I had woken up at 4 in the morning and gone, I'll just have a bit of toast. And I managed to run, of course. Then, of course, my immediate response at the end of the race was disappointment. I had been hoping to run 2:32 and I'd run 2:36. So there was a lot of... I feel that I ran really well despite the tension. Anyway, I then got selected for the Games, and I had, with all of the pressure I was putting on me, I was running 100 miles a week, I was driving myself hard. I'd started to sustain a lot of left side injury, a lot of tension in my left side. And in the London Marathon, there had been a judder in my left side. I went into the Games. I carried this limping leg all the way into the Games. And on the day of the Commonwealth Games, I walked across the meadows in Scotland, because it was in Edinburgh, crying because I knew I was injured. It was the biggest race of my life. I had friends, family had come, and I was injured. And But I set off, of course. I was running 2:32 pace till halfway, and then my injury set my body out. And at 20 miles, I had to withdraw. And it was devastating to me. I stood at the side of the road and sobbed in my brother's arms. And it was like for me, my world had ended. But I was very well brought up. And all my friends and family, I say well brought up, but my upbringing was that you do not wear your heart on your sleeve. So that everybody came to come and have dinner with me afterwards. I pretended I was okay, and my entire being was disintegrating inside me. And my brother stood up. I'd come to run. I'd been born to run, and I couldn't run. And my brother stood up and said, "It doesn't matter what Julia did today. What matters is she's gathered us." And I knew he was right, and I knew because I was still knowing that I'd come here to shine my light, and my light was dim. So after that, I went, I have to look at what is going on, what this pattern is, where I am in a cycle of pain rather than joy, even though there was joy in it, of course. And if you met me, of course, there was fun. However, I then investigated, and I now have, we're going to spin forward 25 years, not quite yet though. The next 25 years, I knew after that race I had to really go within myself deeper. I had to clear this pattern, and that it meant that I engaged even more in yoga, meditations, things to address what it was that meant that there was this destructive element within me. And over the next 25 years, I had many, many races, and the pattern started to cycle up, and I started to free, because I knew that where I was going was to free myself, to run like the child, to love running races, to try my hardest, to see how fast I could run. I knew that was it. Now, by now, of course, obviously, I've gone up to this peak. From then on, my running has, of course, got slower, but I still went, but I've come here to run. I've come here to see how fast I can run. I've come here to express myself. So it didn't matter to me, actually, that then my running races were starting to get slower. I just loved the fact that I was clearing this pattern. So it's a long story. Obviously, I was going to do 25 years. That's another talk. But when I was 53, I knew, over the years, lots of things have happened, but I knew that I was free, that although I still was carrying a bit of tension in my left side, my emotional state was free. I loved competing again. And there was a marathon in Edinburgh. I was like, how fitting to 25 years later go back to this city and to run again free. And so I went up, stayed with my brother, and I didn't feel nervous. I was ready, but I didn't feel nervous. I had a fabulous run. That's me just finishing. I ran 3:08. I was 53 years old, so that I think I was third in the country. That I've always shoot into the leaderboard because I was born to run. So that was a real lovely resolution. And as I really felt that we shall not cease from our exploration. The end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know that place for the first time. And for me to be in my 50s, running free, running as I'd run as a child, loving trying to run fast, not minding that the marathon time now was over half an hour slower, I was free. However, a few weeks after that, I was training again. I was running on Eastbourne Seafront because I used to live here, and I was doing some intervals, and there was still tension, obviously having run a race. And as I was running in the drizzle, there was a sound like a gunshot in my knee. I was like, ugh. So I turned on a sixpence and I thought, oh, this might be it. This might be the end. But it wasn't. So some weeks later, rehab's happening. I've been swimming in the sea, running in the sea with a wet vest, all the things you do to rehab. I walked up the beach, and in my inner voice, I heard these words: there's more to let go. There's more to let go. For you to shine your light and have running a total expression of light, there's more to let go of. So, enter, stage left, a Nadi. So I was single at the time, and a Nadi came into my life 8 years ago, or whenever, 53, and I'm 60, aren't I, 7 or 8 years ago. And given that, from the age of 15 years old, every Sunday morning really, apart from if I was injured, every Sunday morning I would run 20 miles. And, you know, I'm a runner, and off I'd go. I met a Nadi, and I spent my Sunday mornings in bed. So there was a whole degree of letting go to happen. And a few months after we met, we decided to become nomads. So we shed all our possessions. Well, while I was a nomad, and I could feel this letting go, and I wasn't attached to trying to run fast, I wasn't attached to any of the it had a complete let go. I had no goals. I ran, but I obviously spent also lots of time in bed. So, and then we set off, and then I shed my shoes again. So as a child, I'd run barefoot, and then I was on Farmara Beach, and I saw the surfers running in their bare feet. This actually was taken on Christmas Day, wasn't it? But 2 years ago, I was on Farmara Beach, and I was like, maybe that, because I'd still been a tiny bit of holding in this left side. So I shed my shoes 3 years ago. In the shedding of my shoes, do I stop soon? In the shedding of my shoes, I suddenly decided I would run across Spain in my bare feet. And I realised that Caminante no hay camino, so hace camino al andar, is by Anthony Machado, and that means, walker, there is no path. We make the path by walking it. And I really felt that I finished the race, I ran across Spain in my bare feet. I felt that at 59 years old, that I was back in the step, in the joy of the child, that I was just running for the joy of running, and that I was free. However, after barefoot across Spain, I then decided, actually, I love running fast, I love being timed, I'll see how fast I can get. Which is why in the April before my 60th, I had run very fast. I put in the top 10 in the over the 55 to 59, which is, what's the next slide? Which is why I had decided on my 60th birthday I was going to do this race. So, that's my 60th birthday. I had a fabulous, fabulous party. I had an amazing time. I was 60 years old. And a few days later, I was going to run this race. So as I said, I woke up in the morning. My body was wrong. I went to the bathroom. I fell to the floor. And Nadi thought I had died. He said I did a funny breathing out thing that he went, I'm going to have to deal with something. He went obviously to me going. He went off to call for help. For me, I left my body. I zoomed off. I zoomed out into the vast expanse. I have this memory of aliveness, awareness, but no body, no mind. I have a memory of silence, complete stillness. And this place I was aiming for a sort of dot. I was going at great velocity. I was free, I was fearless, I was alive, I was aware. And I'd let go of everything. I'd let go of even my body. Anyway, Anadi was on the floor trying to call me back. He calls me beautiful, and he was going beautiful, 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 beautiful many times. I heard him say it sound, and I went, I'm here. And I said, I've been somewhere. And he said, where have you been? So I told him the story that I've just told you. And I recognised that I was here. I was being reborn free, running free. I took a long time to recover. Actually, there were no medical, I had loads of tests, nobody found anything wrong with me. However, it took me really months. I would say it was only September, October this year that I was really feeling really back in my body, really back in my running. And of course, I went, I'm feeling back in my running, I'm back in my running. And then, January this year, on January the 5th, I went, I'm going to run a race. So, I run a race, and I am the fastest 6-year-old in the country. February. I might have to run faster. So thank you. I tell you, Tim, I'm so sorry. I practiced this and managed to get it down to 15 minutes. Totally hopeless. I'm sorry. I've gone forever, I've talked. But thank you.